Oh my God.
Okay, I'm going to hit record.
Awesome.
Now, unfortunately, Ellie just messaged in the group. The reason that she was missing our last group call, Larry, is her mom is in the hospital.
Ooh.
And yeah, and so she just messaged, I'm back at the hospital with my mom. So it looks like she's not going to make it. But I wrote down a few notes that she and I talked about last week. So I'll ask some questions on her behalf and then we'll see if Jared pops in, but we won't wait for him if
I love this whole private thing I get. I get this
I
like
know.
99% of the time. It's so awesome. We have all these special guests that come in, like Kelly Glover came in, and it was just me and Kelly. Now we're best friends. And, David, we've already
Show
talked about
up, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, Larry, do you want to kick us off? Well, first, Larry, tell David a little bit about you and your goals.
Well, as I mentioned, David and I are familiar with each other because he's been on my podcast. So
who introduced
he
you?
knows who I am. And he's like, Larry, I'm disappointed that I can't have you on my book launching team because I'm so far into it. But for my next book, Larry, you're totally in. You remember saying that, David? Do you remember saying that?
No, but yeah.
Well, shoot, I heard it somewhere. I don't know where. No, but seriously, David and I know each other from the podcast. We had a great episode. It has not dropped yet as of this week. However, David, I was going to talk to you tonight and let you know that I plan on dropping it next week. It's the week of the launch.
Good.
So I was going to bump you up and, give you some press and have like at least 10 people hear the episode. And, hopefully if we get like a 10% turnaround, you'll sell a book from it. So that's the plan.
I love it. You're awesome. Thank you.
But yeah, my goals are to podcast and be the cat daddy of all podcasting and speak, write at least one more book. I was listening to Henry Rollins earlier today, actually just before I left from the office after Cliff Ravenscraft on Joe Rogan's show. And he's written like 27 books. So I'm like,
wow,
if a punk singer can do it, but don't get me wrong, he's a really brilliant man. But I can do it too, right? So just do it. And I've already got an idea for my next round of literary excellence. So I'll be taking that path. But, the key thing here, David, for me personally is to channel all this with a laser beam type focus that will allow for revenue to be generated from it so that Larry can live out his dreams of entrepreneurial awesomeness prior to checking out. And I'm 46, I'm 6'3", I'm 300-ish pounds. So I'm probably checking out in the next 5 to 10. I mean, I'm just guessing. So I got to get this shit going now. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, so there's my goals.
You're never too late. And the even better news is that you and everyone who's listening in is already a speaker. Now, I just want to say, what did you just drink? Because that's going to cut your 5 to 10.
It's diet. It's diet. It's diet.
That's even worse.
Well, I poured it out of the red can from the anyway. Yeah.
Right. So, the good news is you have a platform as a podcaster, and what's so beautiful now is that, and same thing, like Laura, you're experiencing this also. You have opportunities to speak simply because you have this platform and people want you to speak at things like the podcasting conferences and things like Social Media Marketing World. It's a perfect place. So the good thing is you're already connected to a community that sees you as an expert, and it's just a matter of asking. I know, like, Laura, you're doing all sorts of amazing speaking engagements these days. And I'm sure, well, you tell me, I bet it was just a matter of them knowing that you wanted to speak or you filling out an application, and it was just that easy.
Yeah, it's all networking and it's over time too. Cause like I just started building the relationships even before I wanted to speak. And now that they're putting on events, I was like, hey, I want to speak. And they're like, okay, because I already know you and trust you.
Right. So here's the thing. The number one step obviously is to build relationships and rapport.
Sure.
If you build relationships and rapport based on, I really want to speak, you've broken the relationship and rapport. Because basically what I hear as someone who like books speakers and knows people who book speakers, what I hear is, you want something from me and that's it.
Right.
So instead, just build that natural relationship and rapport and, like go out to drinks or dinner or whatever is possible. Have a virtual coffee. And then the very next step is to make sure that it is known that you are a speaker. So even even very well-known speakers and people who speak a lot, I always ask them, I say, how many people actually know you're a speaker? And they're like, oh, that's a good question. Interesting. And most people say that their immediate circle and the people who they know don't actually know what they do specifically. And so if people identify you right now as a podcaster, that's great. But if you want to be identified as a speaker, well, then lead with that. Now, here's the other interesting thing. I can't hire a podcaster.
But I'm not a podcaster. I'm just a guy that sits at home with a microphone. Can I get hired now?
Maybe. But I would suggest that. So what I tell people is to drop the fancy titles and to say speaker, author, speaker only first. And let the other thing, because what happens is when you say you're an author or a speaker in whatever order you want, whatever feels right to you in the situation, all of a sudden people say, oh, what do you speak about? Oh, what did you write about? And that is your foot in the door instantly. And that's what you want. Now, if you get really good at this, the next thing you should do is ask a question instead of talking about yourself. Or very briefly say, oh, well, you know, I'm in the motivational space. I talk about podcasting and whatever, and I speak around the world. But tell me more about you. Like, what do you do? And they're going to be like, oh, I love to talk about myself. And they'll tell you. Then when you come back at them, you can start to insert things about what you're speaking about that might make sense for them. So they'll connect the dots for you. But it's all very ninja, right? You don't want to say to someone who can book you as a speaker, I really want to be booked as a speaker. I was just at a conference actually last weekend in Florida. And this woman runs the Women's Empowerment Expo. Laura, you should totally apply to speak there. It's in November in Florida. They have 2,000 to 3,000 attendees. She gets like 500 applications per season. Now,
how many slots do you know?
Of
just to wrap our head around that.
Maybe 30 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So these 30 slots are filled very quickly. And she said the way she figures it out is she reads the first 2 sentences of your bio. And in those first 2 sentences, she determines whether or not she's going to read any more or pass. And what she's looking for is if you have something interesting of value for her and her audience. Now, remember, here's where a lot of people go wrong. Your boss as a speaker is not the audience. And a lot of people think it is the audience. The audience, 99% of the time, does not get to hire you or choose the speakers. The planner does. So you need to figure out, okay, Women's Empowerment Expo, for example, take a look at last year's speakers. What did they have? What's different? What do you offer that's a new spin, right? What's their theme maybe this year? What can you do to instantly grab that person's attention? This woman said, she said, you know, don't add your credentials. I did this. I graduated from ... in the beginning, she says, unless it's super connected to your what you're talking about. Most cases, it has nothing to do with it. Don't say, I'm a mommy and a podcaster and a speaker and a wife and a lover of God and a speaker. Just like that, you told me nothing, and everybody is all of those things anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So those, when you're filling out speaking applications, the opening of your bio is super, super critical. What you're going to say there, you want to, I like to joke, I say you want to arouse the person. So they're like, you want their eyebrow to go up, right? 1 or 2 at the same time. 2 is preferable. So that they're like, okay, this person has something, I want to read more. So again, remember that they are the person you want to impress. The booker is the client, essentially, not the audience. Now, of course, the person who's booking you is going to think, what does my audience want? What do they need the most? But it's all still filtered through them. So you want to make yourself look good for that person when you are pitching yourself, for example. Now, how did we get here from where we started? So
you said you couldn't hire me, and I was heartbroken.
I know. So let me address that again then. if we come back to, because you want to monetize, you want to be able to like speak and make money from it. So there's a couple sides to this. One, I believe you never actually speak for free, ever, if you do it the right way. The other thing is, I think that we all have to put in some time speaking for no fee so that we can build ourselves up. Now, here's a way to fast track yourself. And this is why I run my event. Laura's come a few times. You need photos of you speaking. Even if you go to a stage and you have someone take some high resolution photos of you standing on a stage with your arms out and your mouth half opened. And I know it sounds ridiculous.
No, it doesn't at all.
It works, right? Photos of you, Larry, sitting behind a microphone at a podcast setup. People are like, oh my gosh, he's got the setup. He's got a real deal. He's even got like the sound treatment on the wall. I mean, he's the real deal, right? He's not podcasting out of his closet. So wherever you have an opportunity, whether it's at Toastmasters, so for a while last year, I actually had a photographer follow me everywhere I went. Every event, every party I went to, I had someone following me, taking photos of everything I did, interacting with people. And I use that on my social media because people see, oh, they're out there speaking, right? So that's one of the things. It's all marketing. And I mean,
very Gary V of you there.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, like, you want to be a speaker? Great. Here's the good news. You arrived as a speaker because as a baby, you spoke all the time. When you were hungry, you cried.
Bet I did.
You cried.
Never stopped.
Let us know, right? And so let's stop calling it public speaking because I don't know what the alternative is. Private speaking in the closet. I don't know what that is, right? So it's got to be, we're speakers, period. And once you start just getting out there and tell everyone, I'm a speaker. And then when you have that rapport, hey, I'm definitely looking for opportunities, to speak. I want to get my message out there. Now, here's the trick. Don't make it about you speaking for yourself. Make it about you sharing your message and your mission and your vision with the world. That excites people. People are like, oh, wow, yeah, I need to have you speak. And then they'll start asking you the questions like, they might say, oh, I don't have a big budget, but like, would you be able to come speak at my event? Or if we did no fee, we'll let you sell your books, maybe. There's always a way to monetize. Now, here's a little gold nugget for you and for everyone who listens in later. If you have a book or anything like that, you can always ask, what's your educational budget? If they don't have a speaker budget, a lot of events will have an educational budget or a materials budget or something like that. And so that's another way to get around it. So for example, maybe a school might have $750 to pay you to speak, but they might have another $500, $1,000, $2,000 in materials or educational that they can get it from another pot of money. So there's always a way to get a little bit more money. Now, here's another cool thing that I'm doing. For example, if a corporation brings me in to speak, part of the fee, they get to decide to send me to a high school performing arts program because it's part of my giving project. So they get to decide the high school program, and I will take part of my speaking fee and give it to that program. That program won't pay anything. So it's a double whammy for the corporation because they look good, right? Part of their fee is going to be tax deductible for them. You see, so there's a lot of different ways that you can bump up by showing I'm out there doing good in the world. And it makes you stand out. It makes people want to book you as a speaker.
I think a lot of it is really just, I'm not going to say common sense sales techniques, but it's selling. You're selling yourself, and you're the product, but you're not selling. Let me rephrase that. You're not selling yourself, because if you're trying to sell yourself, you're presenting yourself. And as you mentioned, you're wanting to give what you can give. And
right.
It's more like the features and benefits of you or hosting you that you're selling as compared to just you. So,
Right, because what you're selling, like you are the vehicle.
Right.
What you're selling is the vision. What are you up to? It's really what my entire book is about, is who are you? Sell who you are and what you're up to and why that matters to other people out there, right? And when people start to find out who you are, they will invite you to speak all over the place, around the world. And enough people will start to see that. Then the rest of it to really monetize speaking, I find is simply, so part of it is just a research thing and a just like understanding, okay, where do I find these speaking engagements? And we can talk about that shortly. But also it's just a confidence thing. It's a mindset thing. It's like, yeah, I'm worth $5,000 for an hour or 20 minutes, or whatever it is.
I have a hard time asking for 500 for a service, much less 5 Gs to just do what I do.
I know. So listen to this. In the professional speaking world, if your fee is under $5,000, you won't even be taken seriously.
Wow.
5,000 is the entry point. So for me right now, USA and Canada, it's $10,000 the fee, and international is 15. Now here's the thing, and this is the honest truth. So I have a mentor who sold 1 million copies of his books, Patrick Snow. Laura's right. So here's the thing. He's very honest. His speaking fee is, 15 and 25. His speaking fee is actually 25,000. And he's very clear and says, I have never been paid $25,000 to speak. I've been paid 18, but most of my speaking engagements are between 5 and 15. But they know that they're getting a $25,000 speaker, right? This is all in the marketing. James Malinchuk, brilliant, brilliant man. He's called himself America's #1 motivational speaker, whatever his tagline is, right? Because he learned from, no joke, from Muhammad Ali. He's like, Muhammad Ali actually is not the #1 heavyweight champion of the world because there are so many factors and, right? It's just marketing. He said, well, if he can do it, why can't I? And so, like they set these fees super high. Even someone like Brian Tracy, I mean, do you think Brian Tracy is going to turn down $5,000 if they said, well, your fee is 50, we have 5?
And it's like 20 minutes to your house.
Expenses.
Yeah.
Hello. You see what I mean? Like, but they know they're getting a $50,000 speaker. Everybody wins in the end, right? So it really is just stepping into your own confidence and power and realizing, yeah, I'm a $5,000 speaker, because these other people who are getting paid $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 to speak, they're just making. So if you're not going to have confidence in yourself, someone else is going to have confidence in themselves, and they're the one who's going to be on the stage and not you. And so it really is just a matter of saying, okay, that's my minimum is 5,000. Now, again, school down the street calls you up and says, hey, we have $1,000. Would you mind coming in for an hour to talk to our students? Then you say, absolutely. And you're smart about it. If you pay up front, I will give you a discount, my special bonus, right? So pay up front, paid up front, and no problem, I'll do that for you. So that now you're not waiting for that $1,000 until the speaking engagement, right? So you're generating income as you go. So, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and those things just come around. Now, okay, where do you actually find these speaking engagements? Besides just telling everyone, I find that's the best way, and just going to a bunch of networking groups or special interest groups and putting yourself out there and introducing yourself to everybody as a speaker. People are intrigued by that speaker author. People are intrigued and they want to know more. Great places to speak. Network marketing groups all have their Super Saturdays meetings. They all bring in people to speak about different things, connecting, sales, building relationships, speaking, all sorts of things like that. Anything that you can connect to the network marketing world, they'll bring you in to speak to their teams. No problem. Like I said, any networking group, anything like that. You can also go on things like Thumbtack, for example. And there's a lot of speaking engagements that come up on platforms like that.
Is that an app?
Yeah. Thumbtack is a website, an app, where you can hire a plumber or you can hire a speaker. And, yeah, they're versatile.
Sorry, it tickled me.
Yeah. So, and you can create a speaking profile there. And there's a couple others too, that there's all sorts of like speaking apps out there. So which sort of leads me to, should you join a bureau or an agency or something like that, I would approach with caution. A speakers bureau, unless you are their speaker, like their
go-to,
gal, you're just filler.
Hmm.
So I don't know, like if you find a really good one, great. But most of them, now here's the other thing. Let's talk about agents, right? So maybe you get to the point where you need an agent. My question is, why would you want to outsource all of your relationships to another person? Because that's really what you've done.
Sure.
And if you and that agent have a falling out or whatever, all those connections are gone, all of them.
And they're probably going to do damage in the wake of your separation. It's similar to voiceover. Having a VO agent is ridiculous if you build the relationships in the industry, you'll get the gigs and you don't have to worry about having an agent. Now, a lot of them like to run out and get an agent because it makes them feel personally credible. Let me get with my agent and see what they say. But it really, just like you just said, you're outsourcing everything from relationships to your own professional credibility. And
right.
I don't know, I like to be in control of my credibility.
Yes. And I think you should be in control. So now here's the beauty. All the company here, everyone who's connected to Laura, pretty much are published authors. So here's the beauty. That book, we all know, of course, is better than a business card. Now, what do you do with a book when you meet someone who can book you in speaking engagements? Well, you send them a copy of your book that you sign and maybe put a personalized note with it or something like that. Forget the brownies and the send out cards and stuff like that. That is insincere. Send a book. Oh, and my dog wants to get in on the action.
We're holding a conference here.
Galileo. Come on, this is important stuff.
That's such a good name, by the way.
My mentor, Patrick Snow, helped me through the process of this book, and he's gotten so many speaking engagements by sending books to meeting planners. So what he does is this. He researches on the internet conferences. So I actually have a VA dedicated to this. Every week, she sends me a number of speaking engagements that she scours across the internet. It's the best like $10-$20 that I spend a week, for her to just take a couple hours and go look for speaking engagements. Then I take a look and I figure out, okay, is this something I want to apply to? Is this something and sometimes there's great stuff and sometimes it's like random, like, the Conference of Architects, which it's not a fit for me. But it's all just research and you just go through. Then you find out, okay, if they're open for speakers, you want to find out who is the person behind it, who's the planner, take a look at last year's speakers, what the topics were, again, like I mentioned before, find out where the headquarters is, get a book, sign it. If you have multiple, pick one that is appropriate and mail it to the organization and say, hey, I've applied and I sent in a book, why not? Because, Patrick has told me so many times, he's been on, invited to speak. They said, oh, we had 53 applications. You're the only person who sent us a hardcover book or a real physical book. People sent us PDFs and Kindles and all this stuff. You were the only one who sent a book. And I love it. The way he tells the story is brilliant. He says, he asks them, well, what did you like? He said, oh, the book, it looked amazing. He's like, no, what did you think of the book itself? They're like, oh, we didn't read the book. Like no one had time to read the book, right? Which is hilarious because, you labor over these things and then oftentimes it doesn't actually get read, but just having that book does, so leverage the fact that you're an author to get speaking engagements because not everybody has a book. And more importantly, not everyone who has a book actually uses the book as a leveraging tool to get speaking engagements.
See, I do that with my book in just about any. Is my mic on? I didn't mean to overtalk you. I'm sorry. I apologize, David. I'm speaking. This is what I do. I'm professional. No, but I use my book as a business card. I really do. It's like $2.14 a copy of the book. I don't care. Who's going to hold on to a business card as compared to my 8.5 by 9 or whatever it is, 8 by 10 book or whatever, whatever the size is. I don't know what size it is.
Now here's a ninja trick. Hang on. Sorry to interrupt you now.
No, please, by all means.
as a business card, this is super cool because not only is it a business card, it's got multiple different topics in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I've written my book is that I have a chapter on leadership. I have a chapter on motivation. I have a chapter on transformation. And so let's say you meet someone or you send a book to someone who they have a leadership conference. Well, maybe you put a special note and say, hey, check out chapter 17. It's all about leadership.
Mhm.
Right? So highlight, don't just plunk the book down and be like, because they're not going to read it unless you
Right.
point out what is special about your book, right? And it might be even enough for them to just open it and be like, oh, wow, chapter 17 is all about developing your leadership skills. Amazing. We should hire this person for our speaking engagement, right?
Mhm.
So simple, but not a lot of people do this because they're all stuck in like sending brownies to event planners. It's like so ridiculous to me.
If I'm planning
Now-
the event, you can send me brownies. Let,
Okay.
let me ask you this though, David, because you mentioned you have topics in the book like leadership and coaching. I don't remember the other two that you named off because I wasn't listening because I had this question floating through my head. How do you consider yourself, or how do you become, how do you get that stamp of, well, I can speak on leadership now?
Well, if you're not going to do it, someone else is. Honestly.
Love it.
Because here's the thing. Like, I have been to here is why I have really stepped into the speaking space so audaciously. So I've been a performer, presenter, speaker my entire life, really. But it was not, I was more behind the curtain, okay? And I was a teacher for 10 years, theater producer for 25 years, and a yoga studio owner. When I moved to this country, I started going to all these entrepreneurial events. There's absolutely no shortage of them. Every weekend, we could be at a different one, right? And I started going to these things, and I saw very successful people get on stage, at least they said they were successful, and be terrible. And I thought, wait a minute, what the HE double hockey sticks is going on here? These people are apparently like high earners and they're terrible, terrible, terrible on stage with no, I mean, they say that they're delivering value just because they say this, I'm here to deliver value, and yet no value actually comes out of their mouth. They have no vision except to sell you something and to funnel you into something, and people go crazy for them. So frankly, I'm tired of it. So that's why I work with other people so that we can actually deliver real value and real vision to the world. And I just got tired of watching other people take my spot. So I said, you know what? I am an expert. And it's all just in my own head, right? So Larry, you just decide, what are you passionate about? What do you believe? Start sharing that, because guess what? You might end up the next president of the United States.
Y'all don't want that.
But you know what? The point is, like, if you don't take it, someone else will.
Right. No,
And
I hear what you're
so-
saying. It's hard to claim it. You know, it really is. And Laura will be the first to tell you that me and imposter syndrome, we are like best good pals. We're like peas and carrots. We can't be separated. I struggle with that, you know, and especially, I mean, I can talk on leadership. I have leadership skills. I have leadership experience. I can speak. I won the blue ribbon at Toastmasters, I'll have you know, against what was he? He was the dean of the local community college. So he's the head of the community college. I kicked his ass. Yeah, I said it. Community college, though, so he's there for a reason. But anyways, you know, I have the ability to do these things, but I don't allow myself. And I know I'm speaking for other people as well. I have to be, because I mean, if fewer people felt the way I feel, you'd have a lot more speakers that you're dealing with. You know, the competition would be a lot stiffer, because I have to imagine that there are some really great speakers out there that just simply will not allow themselves or empower themselves to take the step out on that stage, under that spotlight, in front of that microphone, in front of those thousands and thousands of screaming fans, and deliver their message on whatever it is, you know? So,
Let's see, what is an expert? So, okay, let's get real for a second. Laura and I come from school systems in 2 different countries.
mhm.
But I'm pretty sure what I'm about to say is not going to surprise Laura. So when I became a high school teacher in Canada, in Ontario in particular, there's a degree, and you know, you go through, and then all of a sudden they bestowed me with this curse, which I call it a curse. They said, oh, by the way, you are qualified to teach everything up until the 9th grade. everything: English, math, chemistry, phys ed. And I said, whoa, I am a music teacher. And they said, oh no, you can teach everything. And I thought to myself, well, that's insane. And I had multiple colleagues who did do that because there's a lot of teachers and not a lot of jobs, and you do what you have to do and you figure it out and you get the resources. Am I right, Laura? Did you experience this in your career also?
Yeah, I did high school, so it's a bit more specialized versus like elementary or junior high. But I mean, I definitely worked with people who had no place teaching what they were teaching.
Yeah. And I was a high school teacher too. But what I'm saying is when I got my credentials to teach high school, it was specialized, but all of us, so because what happened in my first year teaching, they said, oh, we'd like you to pick up an English class. And I said,
Oh,
I am
wow.
the last person you want to teach Shakespeare, because I mean, if we turn it into a musical, maybe. But so it was just really interesting. So again, it's just you claim the spot. As long as, look, I don't really love this saying, but you know, when you know a little bit more than the other people. But the thing is, as a speaker, here's the thing: your job, and again, Laura and I, as former high school teachers, your job is not to teach your audience anything, actually, because you come across as asinine when you do that. And it's very limited. If you think that your content is actually going to help you build your platform as a speaker, you will be exhausted and never actually make it, because you're always going to have to keep reinventing. And let's face it, Google has the content market cornered. So there's nothing that you're going to say that people are going to pay $15,000 for an hour for that I can't get for free on Google anyway. So it's really who you're being that we're paying for: your personality, your stories, your unique experiences. So if you show up and share what you are brilliant at, people will be engaged, right? So it really is just, it's a little shift in mindset to, and like I said, if you don't claim it, someone else is going to claim it. And they are already out there, leadership speakers who have no business, people speaking about podcasting or whatever it is that is in your expertise that have no business doing it, but because they've built the relationships or they've created the marketing stuff, they're out there speaking. Excuse me.
Bless you. Yeah, I mean, just to jump in with like the high school element, you know, I taught math and psychology. My degree was in psychology, but not math. I mean, I was a big nerd, so I mean, I could figure out anything, but I hadn't looked at this stuff for years, not since I was in high school myself. And all of a sudden I had a class of teenagers looking at me like, okay, how do I do honors geometry? And I would literally learn it the night before, like relearn it, and then come in and teach it. So I feel like, but to your point, they could go and Google everything about geometry. And these days they could probably watch like an MIT professor teach geometry for free or something online. But one of the things that held me apart as being an effective teacher was that I made the environment feel safe. I made everyone feel welcome. I made collaborations happen. I facilitated learning and engaging and having fun with what they were doing. So it wasn't like I was the ultimate knowledge of math in the world. And quite frankly, the person who's the best at math probably sucks at teaching it to high schoolers. So
right,
I didn't need to be that.
And that's, it reminds me, right, because I didn't actually finish the point that I was saying, is like, it's none of your business to teach anybody anything. And in high school, oh my God, we learned that in the hardest way, because they don't want to learn. They know everything already, right? It is your business as a speaker to create a space for them to learn it for themselves. So a speaker is just like, you got the flashlight and you're pointing the flashlight in the different directions so that your audience can imagine for themselves. Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe they are right. Oh, that's a good idea. I should try that. This guy, this gal is really cool. I want to learn more, buy their stuff, whatever it is. Right. So that's one of the things that I find. I call them the book of knowledge speakers. If you're a book of knowledge speaker, it's just exhausting, and you can't stay ahead of it all the time.
Yeah.
You are an expert in who you are and what you know. And if you hold space, post-transformational speak, you hold space for your audience to have their own transformation based on the stories that you share, the information that you share, the vision that you have for them, what you want them to do about it. They will meet you, because you're going to meet them where they're at. And then you're going to raise them up. They're going to come meet you where you're at, because they're going to be inspired and motivated by you.
Yeah, and it's like, you're not just giving facts, you're sharing stories, and no one else has the same stories you have. So you can't even compare yourself to anyone else. It's just about delivering your stories and connecting with your audience. Therefore, you are already more expert than anyone else on the planet. You just have to practice the delivery more until you're comfortable with it.
That's it. And that's where the performance aspect of speaking comes in. And that's where you can have a lot of fun with it. It really is a performance. What happens when you create it as a performance? So, oh my God, I have to call out the elephant in the room right now. There's this pandemic of people who think that because they're watching the Gary V's and the Grant Cardones, who are extraordinary, but they think that they get up on stage and do not practice. What they're missing is that they have 20, 30 years of practice on who they are being. And so they're very comfortable in their skin. So someone like Gary Vee can stand on stage, and because he's shared those messages 1,000 times before, right? We who have not done that for as long as they have can't just go up and make it look organic and raw and real. You're wasting the audience time. So when an audience sees that you've put in that work to create this, like I said, I just spoke at this conference last weekend, and it's this like 20-minute. So in my 20-minute talk, 18 or so minutes, there are 92 slides. And when I sent the slides, the organizer messaged me back and said, "We did tell you this is 20 minutes, right? Are you sure that this is going to fit?" And I said, "Trust me." Why? Because it is literally like watching this fast-moving movie while I'm speaking, because I'm doing the whole kinesthetic and visual while I'm speaking. It's a very fast-moving, very entertaining thing that I'm doing. And so, often, and this isn't, I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm so great or whatever, because I'm actually tickled by it every time it happens. They messaged me the other day, the conference organizer, and said, "You were by far the favorite out of all the speakers who spoke that day." And it's not because I was necessarily any better or had a bigger message than anybody else, but I can tell you, because I watched all the other speakers, I did put the most amount of time into crafting something that would blow them away.
Mm-hmm.
And what I created was based on the audience having an experience that they would never forget. I did that on purpose. And I created some tension, and here's an example. This was a women's conference. It's actually quite entertaining. I was invited to speak at the Motherhood Rewritten conference, because every motherhood conference needs an upstanding gay male to speak at their conference. I was the only male speaker. And so I did this talk called Measuring Up Motherhood, MUM for short. And I talked about, delivering value as a mother, and how do you ever measure up, if you ever measure up. And I asked the internet a question: who delivers value? Well, what was very interesting is that all of the answers that I received were male in the actual post that I created. Then, when I go to another part of my talk, I made sure to make it very female heavy. I got feedback after the talk, and someone said, "I just want to let you know that, this one part of the talk, it was all men, very male heavy," which I thought was really offensive in a female conference, in a conference for women particularly. And then I said, "Great, then I did my job." And she was even more offended. I said, "Because did you notice that when I talked about visionaries, that there were only 2 men in the list of 9 visionaries, and it was all women?" And they said, "Oh, you did that on purpose?" I said, "Yeah, because I wanted to show that, unfortunately, if as a female you're trying to measure up to something, the general population," I asked on Instagram, the 17,000 followers that I have, and all of the answers were males. Who delivers value? Name someone prominent who delivers value. Gary Vaynerchuk,
Tim
Tony
Ferriss.
Robbins, all the males, all these
Larry
men.
Roberts.
Oh my God, Larry Roberts, absolutely. Right? And I didn't create that. That's what came out. So you see, again, as a speaker, I thought, okay, how can I wake them up? But I didn't tell them that. I didn't say, "Hey, by the way, it was weird that I got all men." See, that's where I, as a speaker, left it for them to interpret. Now, what else I did is I created conversation after the fact. So you see, as a speaker, you really are the puppeteer, right? For good, to be able to create a space for your audience to think about things that they wouldn't normally think about and have an opinion about things. Let people have their own opinion. And I think a lot of speakers, unfortunately, the ones who aren't seasoned, want to have the final word. They want to say everything and make sure that they give value. And I'm like, you don't understand. You are valuable. You arrived valuable. What you're up to, your bigger vision, your mission is the value. Because everything else I can get for free on Google. So don't kid yourself, right? Add your own unique spin. Like, I want Laura to come speak at my event. She is next week, because she has her own unique spin on doing. I have tons of people who are pitching me all the time. Oh, I can get your book to bestseller and #1 and this and that and whatever. But Laura has a unique way of showing up in the world that I appreciate. And that's what's going to make the difference every single time. I feel like I've gone on some tangents, but I think it's just, I'm so passionate about this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that I think speakers really miss the boat, that they think it's like, you know, I'm going to do this as a job, as a speaker or whatever. And I'm like, no, you really have to care and be up to something bigger than just delivering value or collecting $10,000 checks for your speaking or selling from the back of the room or whatever it is you think speaking is about. Because it's not easy to hold space for hundreds or thousands of people to have their own transformation. There's a lot of responsibility, I think, if you're going to take that role on as a speaker.
What do you think, Larry, from that?
I'm getting some affirmations from it, in all honesty, and everything that's being said, I have been listening and trying to tie it back to something that I can relate to in my own experiences. And, you know, as a facilitator within the office space where I'm at now, it's not uncommon for me to get up in front and speak to people and instruct people in soft skills and hard skills and technical skills and that sort of thing. And I'm actually it's interesting, as of late, I've been moving back towards that role at a quicker pace than I have in a long time. So I look at those things, and then I also heard where you say people get up in front and they talk and they say they're providing value, but they're not. Even if their content is valuable, it's not being delivered in a way that transitions that value from the space in their heads to the audience. Because if you're speaking in a very monotone voice and you're even giving some really good advice on how to do this, nobody's hearing you. They're just like, oh my God, what's happening on Facebook? You know, and I have to imagine, and I don't have experience in this arena, but I have to imagine, especially in today's environment, you were talking about teaching high school and everything's on Google, or you're giving a speech in front of hundreds or tens, even, who cares, and you lose them, and next thing you see is everybody starts doing this number, and you're like, holy crap, how intimidating is that, to be up there and you know you've lost your audience, right? Because you see that they're not paying attention anymore. You're not providing value. And if you had it on your bio, a energetic and value-added speaker, and 70% of your audience is looking at their phones or their iPads or whatever, you ain't providing squat. So,
right, and I think a lot of people too miss the point. Like, as a speaker, it's very important that you ask permission for what's about to happen. Now, that's not asking people just to raise their hand just because you know that's NLP and it works, and for them to say yes, is to be like sincere about it. So whenever I speak, I lay the ground rules. I have, it depends on the audience. So this last time I spoke, they were house rules, because Mommy Conference, I made them house rules. I had an image of Mrs. Doubtfire. Normally it's terms of engagement, and I have a picture of Samuel Jackson in the movie Terms of Engagement. And I get them to agree that they're going to stay awake, that they're going to borrow my vision for them, that they're going to have a bigger vision for themselves, right? So you have to really create the space for people to accept what's about to happen. I just want to touch on something that's really interesting. So I have a client who's doing a TED Talk actually next weekend, TEDx Solana Beach. And when she first saw me speak, I was 100% sure she was like not interested. She was not buying what I was selling. She was on her phone the entire time. And right after, she came up to me. The whole time she was on her phone that I was speaking for 5 minutes. She came up to me and says, I want to hire you. I want to do a talk. I want to create. And we're best friends now. And like, I've been working with her for a year. It's been amazing. She's a great client. So sometimes what you see is not what you think is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we learned that in the high school space.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, Laura. I had these like students, after a whole semester, they said, "Oh my God, that was the best. You're the best teacher I've ever had." And I thought, you were here 3 days out of the semester, or you were like asleep, right? Sometimes what we see is not actually what's happening. And also, as a speaker, again, if you are the person who is holding space and you just own the confidence. So I had an event last week here at our place, and there were 2 people who started speaking while I was speaking, and they had a whole conversation going, and I let it go for about a minute. And then I literally had to interrupt and say, "I'm so sorry. Would you mind?" I wasn't actually sorry because I am unapologetic.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was just, putting on a show. I'm so sorry. Would you mind, we're distracted. And they were right up front. And so you have to know that it's like, yeah, no one's going to think you're valuable if you can't own the fact that you're valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And say, I don't want you to miss this. This is good stuff, And so, and then they apologized. They was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't, because sometimes people don't even think. And we live in this world that everything is so distracting. It's available so easily. So again, if you are a speaker and you are a person who is holding space for other people's transformation, and you really believe what you're speaking about, then you own the space, and you can't be afraid to set the tone and be funny about it. It's a great opportunity for humor. Like I could have totally said, "What are we talking about, ladies?"
Yeah.
It's like, I want to know, So there's always an opportunity to just control the space. And I think, as podcasters, like you have to do that. If someone's going too long, or you have to be able to rein it in. So same thing as a speaker, it's just that you're more visible, right? You're not behind a microphone. You are literally in front of people. And what I've learned in being unapologetic for myself is that the more unapologetic you are, the more you take a stand for what you believe, the more people actually respect you. And cheer you on. You're like, well, damn.
It is so analogous with teaching, especially like to high schoolers. Like you just have to go all in and believe it and focus on being entertaining as well as educating. But like just own it, because like if they can smell weakness, and I think audience too can just smell it if you don't believe it, and they're going to tune you out. Yeah, exactly. So and I think that too, it just comes from practice. Like for me, writing was never scary, but standing on stage was. And so the more and more I do it, the less and less I'm scared of it. So I think that it's just a matter of getting out there too and like honing it. So practice it on your podcast, practice it on Facebook Live, practice it all over so that when you're in front of people, it just comes out more naturally.
And it's the being. So what I've learned, I'm going to be doing a TED Talk soon myself. And it's going to be about the X factor of great leaders. Excuse me, because over the last 25 years of working with amazing performers, presenters, speakers, a lot of that time spent in the musical theater space, I was really fascinated because I would see these amazing people sing gibberish lyrics because they'd never make any sense and get standing ovations. And I thought, that is very interesting. How does that work? So I actually think what people are applauding when they see a Gary Vee on stage, it's not that he's dropping the F-bombs. That's not, it's because he's being 100% himself.
Yeah.
Unapologetically. That's the X factor.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we want to see.
That's it.
When I see that coming out more and more, because everybody's, not everybody, I don't mean to diminish what you're saying, but you hear, be your truth, speak your truth, do your truth. And this podcast, the Readily Random podcast that I'm doing now, although I love some of the messages that are going out, I'm not presenting those messages in my own truth. It's a clean show. I'm not a clean guy, And I mean, this was long before I even knew who Gary Vee was. I usually afford a lot. My wife will tell you when I met her the very first night. She's like, "Oh my God, people can use it that many times in one sentence." But, it's just, I'm starting to loosen up in my podcast. I'm starting to tell the podcast from my perspective. And my guests, I see them engaging more. And instead of me having, I started off with the 8 questions. Okay, so what was your big idea, and what spawned? And I just went, and it sucked shit so bad, and I was, this is terrible. And so I thought, all right, I'm just going to have free flowing convo, and that's better. But I can still feel that I'm missing something, because I'm watching every word that I say, and I can't let it flow like I want it to flow. So I'm going to ease into it, but you might hear damn on the show every once in a while. You might hear some other 3-letter bad words, and then it might stretch to 4. Who knows? But I'm not going to get stupid by any means, but I'm going to want to have a conversation like I would have a conversation.
That is honest for you.
Exactly. And I know in certain environments that's not appropriate, and that's fine. But on my podcast, on my show where I make the rules, I can do what I want to do. And that's why I got into podcasting in the first place, because I can do what I want to do. So
yeah. And that's the thing. I foresee in your future the potty podcast or something like that.
Well, I did have accidentally the whole tip. That was my first podcast. I'll let you run away with the name there and see where that takes you.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to bring it back.
What? No, that's the name. That's just the name. I don't even know. You do what you want with it.
No. You need to bring that show back when you can. I know there's other legit. Yeah.
Reeling in the language. I was like,
no. When have I ever reeled in your language?
Well, we're recording now, and David's he's a very well respected speaker. We can't bring him into the gutter with us, Laura. Just because you like to use bad words.
Honestly. And I just want to point something out too. This whole the whole speak your truth movement too. There's a lot of it that is actually out of integrity. And I'm talking about the real, just be yourself, please. I'm not talking about speak your truth so that you can monetize on the back end.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm talking about really who are you?
Right.
The word authentic makes me want to vomit in my mouth lately, because I don't believe it. If it's a digital marketer, I don't believe it, or the words, the exact steps. Really? I mean, come on, how many more times do we have to hear that and maybe it works and whatever, but I refuse to use it. I refuse, because that means that we're all clones of each other.
Right.
And it just
there
doesn't
are no
make sense.
exact steps for anything. Yeah.
There just aren't.
It's almost like a manager that says, look, I'm the manager. No, you're not. Look, I'm authentic. No, you're not. It's the same. If you have to claim it, then you're not it. You know what I mean?
And if you have to say you're famous, you're not.
Yeah, you're not famous. Well, I'm really famous.
We always used to say, I'm an audio guy in my history too, and we would always say, the non-pro audio gear, because except for something like Pro Tools, it's the only exception. The pro audio gear never said pro audio.
Right.
Right? It just had some Korean name or Japanese name on it, and it's just we just knew what it was.
Right.
So you don't have to advertise. Yes, be your biggest ambassador and share your vision, your mission, your goals, what you're up to for others, and the transformation you want to see in the world. But don't advertise I'm this, I'm that, because who cares? Show me. Don't tell me. Show me.
Right on.
Now, I've got a couple of quick questions I'm going to throw in there before we wrap up.
I'm going to have to probably let you ask them and watch it later, because
I know you have to pop out.
I got a podcast starting here in 5 minutes, so I need to get that going. So, David, I really appreciate you taking this time to speak with us. Talking to you is always a pleasure. You have great information. If I need to send you a copy of my book, I will, or brownies, or whatever it takes. I mean, seriously, I'll do squats for you. I don't know. Just
all the above.
Yeah, let me know what you need, and we'll work it out from there. But seriously, man, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. And Laura, I'll look back for this for your questions. All right.
Cool. I have 2 questions.
All right. Bye-bye.
I'll let you run, David. So my first question was around how do you build in asking for paying for travel, especially if it's international, but even if it's maybe on the other side of the United States, how do you word that right in your ask? If that makes sense.
I was choking on because I think it's interesting. If you have any hesitation, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So it has to be okay, my fee plus. You have to be clear. Do you want to be a speaker who's your fee is $10,000 including travel, or do you want to be $10,000 plus travel? Now, look, here's the thing. You have to be reasonable with this. You can't be asking for first class tickets. You can't be, in general, that's just not going to fly unless you are a celebrity.
Yeah.
And most of us are not celebrities at this point. So, is be reasonable with it and be willing to work with your event planners on that stuff. But I would just be super clear. Just decide in your head. Like for me, I know that if I'm going to speak internationally, my fee is $15,000 plus travel. And be clear, that's not a week of hotel.
Right. That's
I
like
would say
2 days or 3 days, whatever the conference
2 nights
is.
of hotel or whatever the conference is that I need to be there, and that's it. And I'll get the rest on my own, obviously, if I want to make a vacation out of it.
Right, exactly.
And you know, and don't be crazy. It's like, don't be like, oh, I'm going to send you receipts for food. And you know, again, when you get to a certain level, maybe, but I would keep it reasonable.
And keep it simple for them to manage too and predict like what the cost is.
The less complex, the better. Yeah, just make it super easy. People who book speakers, they want to keep it simple. So if you can do them a favor and either say, hey, so this conference that I was just at, I just booked everything and then I just sent them the stuff and then they reimburse me. Simple, super easy.
And do you have like a PDF with like your speaker fees like on it looking professionally, or do you just include it in like an email in the copy of like here enumerating it?
Depends. You should have a one sheet, quote unquote, so a PDF that maybe has a couple of testimonials, your maybe couple of signature talks that you do, and the basics of your speaking fee. It's a good idea to have it. Frankly, if I'm being completely honest, it's starting to be a little bit old-fashioned, but the thing is, there's a lot of people who book speakers that they'll just want to see something like that. And it's just a great thing for even for your own peace of mind to have it in front of you. So
and remember.
Right, exactly. And remember, tailor that not about yourself. It's about your boss, which is the event planner, right? That's the person that you are creating that PDF for. Right. So it has to be enticing. So I recently looked at one from James Malinchak. Okay, it's 6 pages, sort of like a trifold thing, 6 pages. There's maybe 5 testimonials on it that are repeated 4 times each.
Wow.
Because he understands that repetition, Beyonce understands repetition, right? So it works for him too, that he uses these same testimonials over and over again and just highlights the same thing over and over again on this. And he's a brilliant marketer, so he comes from a slightly different angle. But yeah, just be super clear. This is what it is. Like I have a page on my website. It's like, here's the fee for international. Here's the fee for local. And here's an email. Contact me. We can work something out. Basically, you always say that.
Right. Like, yeah. Cool. And then my second question is around what are the differences, would you say, between preparing for a TED Talk versus preparing for a talk at a conference that maybe most entrepreneurs are kind of familiar with?
So a TED Talk, what makes TED Talks different is that their ideas worth spreading. You're not trying to sell anything. You're not trying to enroll people into your brand necessarily or your vision. This is kind of like, a TED Talk is like, what's the gift for the world that you want to give out there? And you almost do a TED Talk not for that audience that you give it to that one time. You do a TED Talk for the masses, right? That you know it's going to live out there forever on this amazing platform that is TED. Whereas preparing for a conference is, you want to be just very clear on who the audience is and what your deliverables are. That's not to say that you're not going to be clear on what your deliverables are for a TED Talk, because frankly, the way I like to help anyone speaking is you have to be idea driven. That's what I really like about the TED format. But in an entrepreneurial conference, you want to make it tangible. So for example, in a TED, when I speak at a conference, I like to make it interactive. I do experiments in the audience. I let people interact with each other. It's part of the experience. That doesn't necessarily translate so well in a TED Talk, where the platform really is video. You want that talk to live forever on video so people can experience your ideas and embrace them for their own transformation. So I always say, like, if you're going to speak at a conference or some sort of entrepreneurial conference or meeting, something like that, event, think of how can you really engage your audience so it's not just a one woman or a one man show the entire time.
Mhm.
Whereas a TED Talk is a little bit more towards a one man or one woman show just because of the way the format is.
Right. You want
Now
anything lost in translation from someone watching it in 5 years alone in their room versus having to have been there.
Right. And if you're going to create an experience, you want to make sure then that whoever's watching it on video can also have that experience, whether like
Right.
say you're delivering a meditation or whatever it is that you're doing in a TED style talk, you want to make sure that it will live on, right?
Mhm.
If you're asking your audience to have conversations with each other, well, how does the single person watching your video, they lose that and they won't watch it, right?
Mhm.
So I really like to borrow a lot from the TED format for all talks because I think ideas for me equal vision.
Mhm.
And if you speak from idea/vision, people know that you're up to something bigger. And if you're up to something bigger, you'll get paid more. You get followers for life. You know, it's just whereas, say, for example, you're just speaking about, I don't know, let's say it's just straight on podcast. Here's how to start a podcast. Okay, cool. Let's say you just here's the step by step.
Right.
Great. But maybe Laura has a bigger vision to like podcasting just opens the door to what's possible for you. Because
Mhm.
next you're going to be an author, and next you're going to be a speaker, and next you're going to
Be a visionary leader. Mhm.
Right, a thought leader. Like
Mm.
this is how you position yourself. Okay, so there's the idea worth spreading, right? Like how podcasting turns you into a visionary leader.
Yeah.
That's an idea worth spreading.
I like
Right?
that. Yeah. Larry,
Right.
write
And
that
you can,
down.
yeah, right. And you can incorporate that in your entrepreneurial and conference style talks too, because people like that. Then they feel like, oh, what is possible for me?
Mhm. Yeah, people
Whereas a
want to
lot of
feel a
people,
part of something bigger.
yes. And I think that's where I think a lot of people make the mistake when they do these conference style talks is it's just like taking notes, right?
Right.
Oh, I'm going to write down the slides. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it.
Right.
You know, and it's like, but it's not, information is not sexy, right?
Mhm.
Content is not king or queen anymore for that matter. I really don't, I think it's necessary. Yes, it's one of the vehicles that we use to showcase ourselves and whatever.
Mhm.
But I actually think if content is king or queen, then there's no space for you.
Hmm.
You are the king or queen of your space. Who you are being is the king or queen of your space. And when you add your own story, that's the beauty of being a speaker. And you're a speaker right now, and I'm a speaker right now. We're all speakers. So just be intentional with what you're saying out there and attach it to an idea, a bigger vision, and you'll notice people will be more attracted to you. I say it all the time, right? Jesus has a bestseller 2,000 years
Right.
later, and he
Right.
didn't write it
Yeah.
because he was obsessed with his vision.
Mhm.
So what are you obsessed about? You know, and like we were talking about earlier, if you're not going to be obsessed about something, someone else is, and they're going to make a whole lot of money
Mm.
doing it while you're waiting, you know.
Right. Waiting for some perfect scenario that will never come.
And it's never going to be perfect, ever, never, never.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.